everyone, welcome to this virtual presentation. I'm Midian and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Guelph, and today we'll talk about the differences in tibia morphology, breaking strength, and edge content between conventional and slower-growing strains of broiler chickens. Probably most of you are familiar with this famous picture that compares an unselected strain from 1957 to a conventional strain of broiler chicken. As we can see in this illustration, the conventional bird was almost 5 times heavier compared to the unselected strain when both birds were evaluated at 6 weeks of age. This impressive increase in growth performance observed in conventional strains of broiler chickens mainly occurred in response to the growing consumer demand for poultry meat. In Canada, for example, the per capita supply of poultry meat increased over 140% in 50 years. Although improvements in nutrition, health, and imaging practice all play a role to the evolution and success of the broiler industry, genetic selection has been considered the main contributor to the changes observed in performance of conventional birds. However, this fast and early growth have been linked to leg disorders and lameness, which have welfare and economic implications. And although lameness is a multifactorial disorder, it has been suggested that the rapid growth of conventional birds may not be properly accompanied by sufficiently strong bones to support their heavy and rapidly reached body weight. In addition, the low activity of conventional birds may impact bone development and exacerbate some bone disorders. And over the past 25 years, breeding companies have included leg health into their selection criteria, but the high incidence of lameness in broiler chickens raised worldwide suggests that lameness is still an ongoing issue. Due to the negative impacts of lameness, several strategies have been studied to mitigate leg disorders and improve the walking ability of broiler chickens. However, because some of these strategies include to some degree a decrease in growth rate, the use of slow-growing birds has been suggested as an alternative to improve leg health and decrease the incidence of lameness. But there are limited studies comparing conventional and slow-growing birds when both birds are raised under similar conditions and evaluated and processed at a similar body weight. In this context, the objective of this study was to investigate bone equality traits in 14 strains of broiler chickens, representing 2 conventional and 12 slow-growing strains, encompassing a wide range of growth rates that's going to be discussed in the next slides. Now moving to the methodology, in this study, each of the 14 strains were evaluated in 2 to 3 production cycles or trials, totalizing 8 to 12 pens per strain. In total, over 7,000 birds were raised throughout the trials, and these birds were equally placed into 164 pens, with 44 birds per pen and an equal number of males and females in each pen. Each of these 2 conventional and 12 slow-growing birds were processed at 2 similar target weights. To facilitate statistical analysis, the 14 strains were divided into 4 categories, based on their similarity of growth rate to reach target weight 2. Strains B and C were classified as conventional birds, representing birds with average daily gain greater than 65 grams per day. The slow-growing birds were subdivided into 3 different categories, named fast, representing birds with average daily gain between 53 and 55 grams per day, moderate, with birds with average daily gain between 50 and 51 grams per day, and slow, represents birds with average daily gain lower than 50 grams per day. As we can see in this table, conventional birds were processed at day 34 and day 48, which represents target weight 1 and target weight 2. Slow-growing birds were processed at similar target weights, but 2 weeks later at day 48 and day 62. This allowed us to compare the birds at a similar body weight of 2.1 kg at target weight 1 and 3.2 kg at target weight 2. To facilitate the understanding of the methodology, this slide provides a brief timeline of each trial. Conventional and slow-growing birds hatched at the same day and were placed into experimental pens in the same room. At day 33, half of the conventional birds were weighed. The next day, at day 34, these birds were processed, which represents target weight 1 for conventional birds. At day 47, the remaining half of the conventional birds and half of the slowly-growing birds were weighed. The next day, these birds were processed, which represents target weight 1 for slowly-growing birds and target weight 2 for conventional birds. At day 61, the remaining slowly-growing birds were weighed, and the next day, at day 62, these birds were processed, which represents target weight 2 for slowly-growing birds. At the weighing day, which occurred the day before each target weight, as shown in the previous slide, 2 males and 2 females per pen used as focal birds were individually weighed. The next day, these birds were euthanized by cervical dislocation and kept in freezer for dissections. For the dissection, left and right tibia were removed and dimensions were obtained from both legs. The left and right tibia from birds processed target weight 1 and target weight 2 were used to determine bone breaking strength. The left tibia from those birds processed target weight 2 were used to assess the incidence of tibial dyschondroplasia, and the same bone was used to assess tibia ash content as an indicator of bone mineralization. For the statistical analysis, this study was analyzed as an incomplete block design with pen as the experiment unit. Category, strain nested within category, sex, and target weight were considered as fixed effects, and pen and block considered as random effects. This data was analyzed using Glimmick's procedure in SAS, and the differences were considered significant at p less than 0.05. Now moving to the results, in this table we have the differences in body weight and in tibia dimensions among categories at target weight 1 and target weight 2. As we can see, at target weight 1, conventional birds were lighter than the remaining categories. And at target weight 2, conventional birds were similar to fast and moderate, but heavier than slow. For tibia length, at target weight 1 and target weight 2, conventional birds had shorter tibia than the other categories. For tibia diameter, conventional had the narrowest tibia at target weight 1, but at target weight 2, no difference among categories was observed. In this table, we have tibia dimensions consider the differences in body weight, since categories differ in body weight as shown in the previous table. When tibia length was expressed relative to the body weight, conventional birds had greater tibia length than fast and moderate at target weight 1, while at target weight 2, conventional birds had the lowest relative tibia length. For tibia diameter relative to the body weight, conventional birds were greater than fast and moderate at target weight 1. However, at target weight 2, conventional birds were similar to fast and moderate and lower than slow. Despite the differences in tibia dimensions at target weight 1, no difference in absolute tibia breaking strength was observed among categories. However, at target weight 2, conventional birds were greater than moderate and slow. And when differences in body weight were considered for tibia breaking strength, conventional birds were greater than the remaining slow-growing categories at target weight 1, while at target weight 2, conventional was still greater than fast and moderate, but similar to slow. As previously described in the methodology, tibia ash content was only determined at target weight 2 for all categories. And despite the differences in tibia dimensions and in tibia breaking strength, there was no difference in tibia ash content among categories. Now moving to the discussion, we found difference among categories in most of the variables evaluated. Conventional birds were lighter than slowly-growing birds at target weight 1 due to the early processing age of conventional birds, which occurred 2 days earlier than their expected time to reach 2.1 kilos at target weight 1 due to project logistics. Conventional birds also had shorter tibia at both target weights, but a similar tibia diameter compared to slower-growing birds at target weight 2, despite the age difference with conventional birds being 2 weeks younger than slower-growing birds. This is in agreement with a previous study that showed that conventional birds had wider tibia compared to the slower-growing birds. However, the authors of this study also found that conventional birds had more porous bone compared to slower-growing birds. However, in this present study, we didn't find any difference in tibia ash content among the categories to support this hypothesis that conventional birds have more porous bone compared to slower-growing birds. In addition, we also found that tibia breaking strength, total and relative to the body weight of conventional birds, were similar or even greater compared to the slow-growing birds. And although not reported here, we also found a very low incidence of tibia dyschondroplasia in conventional birds, which might indicate the success of the incorporation of health into breeding programs. However, it's important to remember that conventional birds had shorter tibia, absolute and relative to the body weight, compared to the other categories at target weight too. That may indicate that bone development may not keep up with the accelerated and sharp increase in body weight. The short legs providing support to a heavy and rapidly reaching body weight may impair the locomotion and decrease the activity of conventional birds. That being said, it's important to know that differences in bony traits do not always reflect differences in walking ability. Therefore, the relationship between bony traits and walking ability and lameness should be further investigated. So, from this study, we can conclude that selection for growth does impact bony traits. However, despite the possible deleterious effects of growth rate on bony health, we found that conventional birds had similar or greater tibia breaking strength and tibia edge content compared to the slow-growing birds. But although not presented here, we found differences in mobility among categories, with conventional birds showing indicators of poor walking ability, which may be related to the shorter legs. However, again, the relationship between bony traits and walking ability should be further investigated in other studies, in conventional and slow-growing birds. With that, I would like to take the funding agencies for all the support provided, our Poultry Research Station staff, and all the students, professors, and researchers involved in this study. Thank you very much for attending this virtual presentation, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.